I want to bring in Jolah here. He's finally with us. He got his cam working. I'm sorry that you like got kicked, but Jolah, would you like to introduce yourself and then feel free to riff off of what Tiberius just said.
First off, can you hear me at least somewhat clearly?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, sound
Okay.
good.
I told you my whole studio is at home. I'm moving out of my college dorm. I'm a child. Yeah, so my name is Jola. I focus on progressive rural politics, trying to connect the rural-urban divide. So that's what my channel is basically focused on, pushing against the idealistic brand of like Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske, those kinds of people, focusing more on local politics and actual policy solutions. When
Nice.
it comes to infrastructure, I think it's just more of a reason to support Democrats federally, because a lot of the money that needs to be allocated for these projects can't come from the state level. State budgets are super constrained, obviously, because you actually have to pay for what you do at the state level. So and Democrats are the only people. Republicans are not doing anything. They're not even proposing like an infrastructure bank to try and build roads, bridges, and to try and rebuild these communities. A lot of where I'm from, coal town America, these places became coal boom towns. And then when the coal companies decided it wasn't good for their profits, they basically all left, and all the manufacturing all left when it wasn't good for their profits. There are no free market solutions for this. Like Joe Biden said, we need jobs that cannot be outsourced. We need jobs provided by the federal government funding infrastructure programs in rural America, using things like our amazing hiking trails in like Pennsylvania. Tourism is a thing that can be revitalized in rural areas, and I think, like you were talking about rail, Joe Biden is good for Amtrak. I hope he follows through with policy, but so far he's been trying to revitalize Amtrak Joe, which is something I really am a fan of. But yeah, I want to get this conversation going, so I know a more specific place to add my 2 cents in.
Oh, great. So Tiberius, you said like how it's not like economically viable, right? To have like massive high speed rail like literally everywhere in the country. And I feel like Joe like raised the point, but I would like to like hammer on this like specifically, where it feels like a lot of those investments that would like make rural life like more livable or make it more like amenable to being able to exist in the broader economy. Those are things that should probably be done from like a public perspective, mostly just because private enterprise will not like run those rails, right? Like they're not going to build a high speed rail from like random like middle like Indiana like to Indianapolis to Chicago, right? To provide like the potential to have those jobs. I'm like specifically referring that because I know you're from Indiana and I'm also from Indiana. I'm from like Northeast Indiana. It's like like 2 hours north of Indy, like 2 hours southeast of Chicago, right? Like that kind of like vibe. And if there was high speed rail in that area, I could have potentially like lived in my hometown and then had like a 45-minute commute to one of like those big cities and had like a like serious like like a like 21st century like job, right? And then being able to go home. But like if that infrastructure is not in place, then I'm denied like those potential opportunities while like keeping those communities keeping those communities like young, growing, like that sort of like flavor. So I understand that it's not like say privately viable, but would you be like potentially amenable to having like public policy like create those infrastructure things so that we can have give like people in rural areas more options economically?
So I don't have a problem with public infrastructure in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually a massive fan of the interstate program, and I'm not actually saying when I say that those two regions are the only place that are viable. That's not actually from a private perspective. The public or the United States government will not fund that because they can do math. I mean, they do have actuaries here and there. The reason, seriously, like even the interstate program, or for all that we thought, or I'm sorry, all that we have found that the economic benefits that came out of it, its number one priority was never transportation, was for defense. It was to get the army around in case of nuclear war and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So there is usually extenuating factors to why we actually even do an infrastructure program to begin with. But here's the rub, at least for me. Can you get high speed rail in certain places? Yes. It's incredibly expensive, which is part of it. But it's the problem that you have with something like what you were proposing, where you're going to run a high speed rail from like Lafayette to Chicago,
Yeah.
is that you're just not going to have enough people ride it to where it's ever gonna make any kind of sense that you are literally just gonna make any money on it. You will lose on that. Now there's certain places that you can. You can do Portland and SeaTac and Vancouver. That makes sense. You can do Washington, New York, Boston. That makes sense too. But Indianapolis, Lafayette, Chicago, no, you just won't get enough ridership. And what's the point if you don't have enough?
Okay.
Vancouver might make housing issues a little more difficult in Vancouver, but
Yeah, it's like let's Laven, where you want to weigh in this, and then we can hit Jolah.
yeah, I don't really like. I'm not that again. Like this is a pretty new topic for me, so I'm not particularly familiar with United States rural life. I think that something that would just help a little bit is maybe just listing some very, very generic, very, very straightforward and concrete problems with rural living in and of itself right now. And maybe set aside like the comparison to urban living. Just bearing in mind that like these problems with living in rural areas will inevitably lead people to urban living anyway, because these problems are a lot less prevalent in urban areas. So poverty, illiteracy, unemployment, and homelessness, crime, and violence, obviously, probably a consequence of the poverty. I don't know about you guys. I think that's probably fairly obvious.
Rural areas seem to have like less like levels of like extreme crime. It's more like deaths of despair that it's like that hits them. It's like their like crime rates aren't like as bad as like in cities, mostly because like there's like less people in like rural areas. But like there's a huge amount more people who like either die through like through alcohol or through opioids in like these rural areas compared to cities.
And that makes sense. So I know that everybody here kind of said that there was no free market solutions, and I think I generally agree with that. Mostly what I would want to see is public infrastructure. Though I do think that there is like one thing that you might be able to do that's a little free market. Now this is just something that I thought of. If you guys, I'm sure that you guys will have some contention. So how would you guys feel if the federal government gave some kind of tax breaks or tax loopholes to smaller businesses that wanted to, and they specifically gave these tax breaks to them for starting, I'm talking like local startup type shit. I'm not talking about like some big fucking corporation going into a rural area or anything like that. And incentivizing work there. So like you guys were talking earlier about like, cultural things like movie theaters and restaurants and shit like that. Little things like that, I think that could be beneficial when it comes to the unemployment problem. Now, I think with all the other issues, you would have to rely on something more public, definitely. Like you guys have with railways. And I think in addition to that, and this is a very general thing, just an expansion in welfare would probably help. But as well, actually, now that I think about that, probably not so much.
Well, it's like in terms of welfare spending, right? Like Tiberius like made a pretty good point earlier about how cost of living is so much like lower in like rural areas. So it probably costs less money to keep someone like healthy and on welfare than it is like to keep someone healthy on welfare like in an urban area.
Yeah, I was thinking of something. I was thinking of like the opposite in my head for some reason. I was thinking, if you gave everybody UBI, they would have more opportunities to leave if they wanted to. That's what I was thinking in my head. And I was like, oh shit, that's not going to fucking help urban areas in North America. That's just going to fucking make it.
I guess, yeah. It's like if you give people more economic.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing to give people UBI. I'm a pro UBI guy, but right, that wouldn't help with urban earlier.
Jolah had his hand up, so let's hit him, and then we'll see where.
Yeah, I want to know what you think about like that like tax break thing, because it's something I'm a little on the fence about. So,
well, one big issue in rural areas with the labor force is it's a very competitive market between like Walmart that moves into these towns. That's one of the reasons Walmart wipes out all the small businesses. It's not just because Walmart can produce and sell products at a lower cost. It's also because Walmart comes in and, for example, in my town, they're paying, I think, a starting wage of like $12.50 an hour. And the local businesses can't compete with that. And if wage was increased to $15 an hour for everybody, Walmart would probably end up paying like $18 an hour because they want to compete for good workers that are going to be productive. So local businesses are having a hard time finding productive workers because they're like, hey, come work here for $9 an hour. But why would you work there for $9 an hour at a mom and pop store when you could work at Walmart for $12.50? So that's a big issue happening. So supporting those businesses somehow, so that those workers could work for small businesses and that small businesses can get good workers, that would be a pretty big deal through like tax credits and other forms of incentives. I would want that, but I don't see anybody pushing for those exact solutions. One thing I like, this is an argument rhetorically, in these rural areas, is a lot of them, a lot of people here use the argument, I don't want to pay people to sit on their asses and do nothing or whatever. So I say, hey, how about we pay people to work? So jobs programs, I'm not for a federal jobs program. I'm not even for like a state jobs program. But local community driven jobs programs where people work on roads within the community that might be banged up, sidewalks, they work on playgrounds and all that stuff. Local programs like that, I love that so much. There's no drain on local businesses. It's capital being put back into the area. I think that's a great idea, and I really want to go for that. But as far as is it right to do high-speed rail in these areas, you can't really look at this type of infrastructure as if like this is going to stay the same way like forever. Because first in America, the first sort of like infrastructure, the highways were all the rivers and everything. So we have a lot of towns and like PA and throughout the country along water because they can transport stuff along water. Then we built highways, and once we built highways, communities sprung up around those highways. So even if there are not communities currently in these rural areas, if you create this system of rail, that gives an opportunity for more population centers to actually spring up because that access is now there. It's not going to be there right away, but that gives it the potential to grow. So this is it's going to be a short-term loss. It might even be a 5 to 10 year loss before we see like huge progress on this. But I think we need this infrastructure in place to give rural America a chance. Or I think you're sort of just saying like, hey, sorry, your area is probably going to die. We don't know what we're going to do about it. So I think that's a necessary loss to take.
All right. And then not like just a small like not contention but like question. I'm generally like like I do lots of like thinking of like national like economic stuff. So small businesses really aren't on my radar as it's like something that I deem as like hella important. So what my question would be is like, do we even say like need a shit ton of small businesses in these areas? Because like if you're having like places like Walmart or these massive corporations, right? Like it's thanks Doghouse Show for the follow. You're really really cool. But like specifically, if you have these massive corporations paying like above like ground wages for these areas, right? Like I assume like it's like they're in the middle of nowhere, like $12.50 an hour is a pretty solid starting wage, right? So if that's the case, why would we potentially say try and prop up like less effective smaller businesses as opposed to say like just making sure that we're taxing the biggest businesses and like providing like the welfare for the people who need it? Like
those aren't mutually exclusive positions, I would say.
Okay.
You can. I mean, I'm not saying anybody is necessarily pushing for this in the United States, but I'm saying that logically speaking, like both of those things can happen at the same time.
Okay.
And the reason why I was going the small business route was because a big problem just empirically with rural communities is the lack of employment. And there's data to suggest that providing small businesses with those sorts of like tax loopholes to like startups and stuff like that, specifically like small like startups and local startups and stuff, does incentivize employment in those particular regions because more businesses are created as a consequence of that, and then they're all going to compete with each other. And subsequently, there will be more employment opportunities in the area. That's why I was thinking of that. But at the same, so that's like the more like fiscal, localist, conservative shit. But then, that ends with me with the welfare shit. The welfare shit is also really good too. And the welfare shit is something that should be advocated for too. I'm fine with both of those things. And I think they're both sides. very, very, okay.
Tiberius, you were wincing. Do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, Tiberius, bro.
I'm more just laughing at layman's Canadian nonsense, but I'm sorry, Lehman. I love you, brother.
It's okay.
There's some bits here and there that I'm like kind of like I can get on board with, and there's parts where I don't. Like, all right, so we can talk about should every community be saved, right? And I'm gonna like give up an example here. Like, there's a city about 50 miles over this way. I see you city. It's 100 people, right? It's called Dundas. Fuck Dundas. We don't have to save every community here. The real point here is that what are our community structures going to be where people want to live there, or it is effective for people to live there, where they can have a quality of life. And I threw that magic number out there earlier because that just seems to be where the data is going. But if this community dies, that doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that are people stuck in conditions or situations to where they can't move, like they're in the dying community and they have no way out, or more importantly, they can't transition into something that would go further.
Are you saying that people can't just move? Like just move five? Like I feel like Destiny would be really sad to hear that like you can't. Just,
hey, look, dude, I'm a
I
right
think if you give people.
Look, I'm a right winger. I love my markets and shit. However, I do understand that people have issues. And actually, I would say more often than not, people just don't want to do the uncomfortable shit where they know that their town's dying, but it's just you can have 30-year-olds turn into old men when they're like, well, I grew up here and I'm not fucking leaving and all this shit. And I'm like, they're like, just people are people, right? And sometimes you just give them a little bit of a carrot and they're like, all right, fine, I'll do it. Sometimes you got to beat them with a stick. I'll talk about that particular conversation on the side. My big conversation is that, one, do we want to save everybody, or at least every community? Because maybe every community isn't worth saving. And then two is that what is the community that we're dreaming of? Because I don't think everyone can be urban. You're going to have agricultural communities, oil communities, pretty much anything that is based on any kind of extraction service. That is still going to be the bread and butter of of those kind of communities, of particularly rural communities. But that means they're going to have to pick up and move, particularly if you're in coal. I can't speak today. Coal or oil.
No, that's good. I think you're probably onto something in the sense that we don't have to save every random single stop sign town, but giving people the resources to move. Because I was thinking about this because Laban brought this up earlier about multiple people brought up cost of living between rural versus urban, right? And so I feel like it's much easier to move from an urban center to a rural center, just because if you're saving up money, it's easier to save up for a certain amount of cost to go to a rural site, as opposed to if you're rural and trying to move to an urban area. If if you're living on say $7 wages in or say $10 wages in rural areas, you're probably doing fine, but it's still the cost of living if you're trying to go to a new place, and the cost of living there is considerably higher than where you're currently making your wages. Without assistance, that's going to be extremely difficult.
Well, it's easy to do that initially, but there has to be employment opportunities to sustain you there, right? Which is why you would need to create those in rural communities in the first place. But I also agree with Tiberius, where pragmatically, I don't even think you could save every community, because most employment opportunities are in large cities and stuff like that. As it is, even if you incentivized business creation in rural communities, I think, even though that might close the gap a little bit, I still think most jobs would be in cities, and so inevitably people would have to just move there. And if you want, if you want, ironically, you want to incentivize the just move thing, something that you should be in favor of is UBI, because UBI provides people with the opportunity to do that. Tiberius, what the fuck, dude?
No, I want to get on one part. I do, and that is the part about the job opportunities thing, because that's I touched on this a little bit at the start, but I mean this because this is a really big deal. Yeah, you might have more job opportunities, and they might technically pay more, but that balance between the cost of benefit increase between what you earn in your utility of wages versus how much you actually spend to fucking live there. Some people are definitely finding out that isn't worth it. And people are kind of flooding back the other direction because they're like, wait, I can live more comfortably, in a rural community than not, because if just literally doing back the hand math. There is one thing that we can go into the aside on, and that is the one welfare issue that everyone likes to raise up, which is that rural communities need more welfare than urbans. Keep in mind that's only one program, and that's Medicaid.
Yeah.
If you take that off the list versus food stamps, all the other stuff, it's not on the it's a completely inverted thing. It costs more to live, to buy your groceries, and to literally buy gas in a city, but the rural communities have a huge problem because they have to pay urban healthcare costs. So, random aside, I apologize, but I think a lot of that needs to be talked about here, or at least some degree.
Yeah. And Jolah, you have your multivitamins. Did you want to say something? I didn't see you raise your hand. Oh, sorry. Like I'm not like actually modding this. I was like, so feel free to like jump in. Like don't like wait for me to like see you. Like there's only 4 of us. I feel like there's like no one's killed each other yet. So I think we'll be fine just having a conversation. So what do you?
I'm perfectly calm. I don't
it's
plan
like-
on killing anybody.
It's like, oh, what do you, Jolah? What do you? What do you?
So basically,
It's like, is this paid promotion like on your end? Like, do you get free advertising on this? Like,
if we're gonna go green in America, we're gonna need a lot of land. I don't know if anybody ever saw the blueprints, but even if it's private, government, whatever, if we go green with solar panels, wind, all of that, nuclear, we need. I forget how much square mileage it actually was, but I'm pretty sure it was the equivalent of like 2/3 of Texas that we need if we want to go like totally carbon neutral. Unless if we come up with some like crazy, amazing carbon capture technology or whatever within the next like 5 years. But we need a lot of land to get this stuff done. I feel like rural areas can be the places where a lot of this is done with solar panels and also for wind. But sadly, there's a cultural push against everything that has to do with environmentalism. Although throughout my communities in Pennsylvania, look up Centralia. This is a community where an old coal mine. It's underground. It's on fire. It's been on fire for like 50 years, and this is happening all over the state. So we need to hire people to take care of that. We need to hire people to take care of our national parks, which is still a big tourist attraction. There's ATV parks springing up all over rural America. There's actually a pretty high demand for that stuff. So that's something that can bring capital into these areas. So I don't think we should totally give up. And I think there is something to say about the community that they do provide. The big issue to me is the rural urban conflicts that I see, because I see a lot of people coming into my community because rural areas are some of the cheapest places to live in the country. They'll be brought in from Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, DC, and these people of color will move into 99.9% white communities. And that creates a lot of social conflict as well. So I think that's changing how people vote and what kind of policies they push for, because I'm sure we've all seen the studies on how people's perceptions of policy changes when it gets racialized. So like Joe Biden pushing for union rail jobs should be a pretty good thing to rural people, especially since we all know we're taking a loss if we do help rural communities, but they all push against what Biden's saying because he ends his sentences with BLM. So there doesn't seem to be a cohesive group of Americans pushing for anything to happen. And that is kind of frightening because our democracy already doesn't function well for things we really, really do want. So now there's not enough public pressure for this. I'm not sure where exactly the proper pressure is going to come from.
so in regards to that, how do you feel that we can have a successful coalition to get like stuff like infrastructure or like say like the revitalization of like unions, like moving forward? Or like having, if these rural communities like are getting like really really mad because the cost of living in cities is so high, so now like people of color are like leaving them to like live in these rural areas, would you feel like potentially long term that would like make again, this is like for white guys, so it's like issues of race like better because like they're like exposed to like people of like different backgrounds. Like I grew up like in an area where like it was like super white, right? Like I had never like there was like there was like one black guy like in my entire town, and I like had never seen like an Asian person until I was in high school, right? So it's like there's plenty of like small town people like that who aren't exposed to like people who look different than them. And I feel like that potential exposure, like in the like initial like phase, yeah, like there might be like people might be uncomfortable because like they've been told that like anyone who doesn't look like them is like is a terrorist, right? But I think long term, that's probably one of the best ways of getting people to get along better is like just having exposure, right? Like it's like
Um,
they've like done studies like with this like with TV, right? Where it's like if you watch like shows that have like representations of like people of different ethnicities, like you're less racist. It's like
well, there's much better there's a much better analogy for that. There's a I think it's a sociological theory. It's called contact theory, and it's basically the theory that the more somebody is surrounded around somebody who is different than them in some way, the more tolerant they become of those differences. And this absolutely applies to racial groups too, like and ethnic groups or whatever groups you want to think of. Like this is literally the reason why immigration can exist. It's because when, people come here and you give them the time to settle with one another and to interact with one another, they eventually do develop more of a tolerance towards each other. So if there are more black people or whatever ethnicity or race you want to throw in there or group you want to throw in there around people who are generally more homogenized than the rest of the population, that would probably be good for that community. Yeah.
I have a hot take then. I think progressives need to learn how to listen to white people more. Um,
Based.
because, but no, honestly, we want to
I
talk
feel
about.
so so unheard
oh my
by
god,
No, it's not about
by
feeling unheard, but what are we talking about here? We aren't talking about how, people of color are feeling during this process. We're talking about how do we de-radicalize white people who literally feel like their culture is being taken from them. How do we de-radicalize these white people from these areas? There is a certain way you can approach it that's good. There's a certain way to approach it that's bad. And if you do have a certain insight to those issues, I feel like you should be able to give that in progressive circles without being down to like, oh, you're white. Like I give my take in college classrooms about like I don't think we should use the word white privilege or any academic language because it's convoluted. It's a dumb messaging pattern or whatever. It doesn't work. If we're not doing things to create progress, why are we doing it? Like, are we going to make progress or make a point? Because I hear people say like, we need to make sure the white people understand what white people have done to black people. Okay, yes, we do need to get them to understand systemic racism. But these white people don't even know how classism affects them. They don't even understand how their jobs actually left. They probably think Joe Biden literally like paid off all the companies to move to China. They literally do this stuff. They don't understand how affect them. They're not going to understand the extremely complicated process of how systemic racism works. So when we're talking about these topics, I think we got to, I think just white people. We need more white people. Just
like okay, like so like but so you said like how do you deal with it then? Like how do you because I remember like I said something like earlier today, like I was getting like kind of like frustrated, where there's a lot of people who are like, oh, like we got to be nice to people who are like anti-vaxxers and like COVID deniers, right? Like because you can't just bully them into getting like shots and like because then they won't they won't do it even more.
No, you
But I was like,
you just
but like
blindly
what?
educate.
Yeah, but it's like what do we do then, right? Like because like we have like I think we have like what like three basic tools, right? It's like we have social pressure, we have like social consequences, like so it's like social pressure being like, oh hey, like like I told my great aunt, she's like a QAnon person, like COVID denier, she's like all that sort of stuff, and I was like, hey, aunt, I'm just like, hey, I'm not gonna dox her, but like I'm like, hey, my family, we will not see you until you get vaxxed because like my brother's like my sister-in-law is immunocompromised, so it's like we're not gonna fucking like have her die because like you think that like you're getting microchipped. Like so social pressure, I think like on a family level or like like a close personal friend level, like that can absolutely work. But like and then like in terms of like social consequences, you can say, hey, if you don't get this, then like yeah, you maybe you like some countries won't let you fly there, or like you might not be able to go into like a restaurant or a club, right? And that's
Well. This ties into the like another rural issue, which is poverty and education, right? These are also things that a lot of rural areas are lacking. So when it comes to people being more prone to like conspiracies and stuff like that, or what have you, microchipped COVID vaccine or whatever the fuck, shit like that. Basically, what you want to do is you have to invest in like better education and like civics and stuff like that, so people understand like how their institutions work and that their institutions aren't like fundamentally trying to fucking destroy them. like, but
That
no,
would
but
be
like
nice,
there,
like-
there is. Yeah. No, like, but there is evidence that people are more prone to thinking like that if they lack educational opportunities. Doesn't mean it's one to one. There's a lot of reasons why people get conspiratorial, but that's one of the reasons. That's one of the studied reasons.
Yeah, education matters more than poverty.
Okay, and then let's Tiberius
Yeah.
has held up his hand for a little
Yeah,
bit.
I want to get on this one, but I just don't want to be like a bully. So,
Be a bully.
Bully.
Be me.
Bully.
Let's get mad. Like,
I got to hit layman's thing a little bit. Now, granted, there's part of this I know I have data for, and there's part I don't. And that is, education isn't the problem here. Rural communities do have some education problems, but it's nothing like what we see in like dense urban cities, particularly in poorer parts of that.
That's true. I agree with that. That's true.
Well, the real problem we have here, and I'm going to go a little bit anecdote Andy here, as part of
immediately discount. How many vitamins do you have? Like, just like.
All right. Anyway, memes aside, I'm going to go a little anecdote Andy here, and that is, in my experience and what I have seen, and not just in my particular community, but throughout most rural communities here in the country, is that they have become incredibly distrustful of those that are elites. And it's not just like elites in general, but I mean, populism in a nutshell, yes, if you want to put it that way. But the long and the short here is that rural communities largely no longer have trust in their institutions, and whether that is politics, whether that is literally the sciences, is that almost every major social foci that is dominated by what makes people believe what they believe is now kind of in the hands of the left. And I'm not saying that is a pejorative or like an attack. It's that most ruralites are conservative or right-wing, and what we're seeing here is that their enemies, if you will, now control everything in their eyes. And between that and the fact of what they've seen through their past, where they were told, hey, the Republican elites told them, hey, free trade is good, and you're going to have even better jobs when it's all said and done, they feel like they got screwed. And so it doesn't matter like if you're a scientist or a politician or freaking Bill Gates, these people actively think that you're fucking crazy and you're out to kill them.
Okay. So I feel like the best way of dealing with that would be to make educational systems like more accessible, or like have like these findings, or like have the experts be able to speak to these people in a way that they understand, and let them know, and prove to them that they're not like trying to like fuck them over. But I would probably say there's like an equally like powerful or poignant force that's like pushing this like brand of like, if you want to call it populism, if you want to call it like distrust of like elitism, right? Whatever you want to call that. That in itself, I would say, is equally destructive, because I can personally say that like a lot of like the quote unquote elites, like in the case like the like CDC doctors and stuff, they're not trying to kill these people. They're actually just trying to do their jobs like to help them, right? And so like if you have like this massive level of distrust in our institutions, then it's like I'm all for like making our institutions prove that like that they're on the side of the people and like doing good things for people, right? And like that's like all like electoral politics, is making like the government like represent us better and like do good things for people, as opposed to like whatever like interest group that you dislike, right? But I'm not really sure how to specifically solve that problem, because like I know what to do on my end, which is like saying, hey, is do like what Jolah just said, saying, hey, stop using such academic language to explain problems that these people like fundamentally like probably will understand better if we just like use it, like don't use like hyper academic. It's like
speak the same language.
Speak the same language as other people, right? It's like we've seen something where it's like a lot of guys immediately like check off when you say like toxic masculinity versus like saying like, oh, like positive masculinity, right? Like if you say like this is an example of what it means to be like a good man, right? A lot of guys are like, oh, okay, like like I can see that, like he's helping his family, like he's like maybe like socially like doing well, like all sorts of stuff. But if you say like these are like the toxic traits of men, like a lot of people are just like, I don't want to talk about that, like. So it's just like
that's because you're threatening people with like a negative, and you're not giving them a positive. So people feel more threatened when you say shit like that to people.
So I don't agree.
Are cringy.
You know?
That's fair.
What?
So I don't agree with any of this.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Debate
Here's my
time. Let's go.
here's my real take on this, guys. Is that it's not that some of it's language, sure, but I think most of this really comes down to. This might sound a little weird. You're bringing urban issues into rural issues, and there's no communication for these issues, right? When you're talking about most of these rural communities, not exclusively, but a lot of them, particularly in the Midwest, which is where I'm from, is that they're 90% white. They don't, as weird as this is going to sound, they don't have a race issue because literally everyone's like damn near mono race, so they don't give a shit. What they do give a shit about is, how are they going to put food on the table? Where's their, are they actually going to get their kid off to college? That kind of shit. Those things are universal. You can actually do have those conversations. But if you look at police brutality, that's not an issue for most of them. The race issue, which I already talked about.
That's a good point.
A lot of these are literally just when they hear about these talking points out of like San Francisco and shit, where Dianne Feinstein isn't woke enough to be literally on a fucking school. They literally look at the left as are fucking nuts, and this is why there is literally like a massive political divide between the left and the right over urban and rural. The issues are completely fucking different, so it makes sense that you now have political parties that align with that.
I understand that, but I would say like these people, even though like they're like say it's not like inside their world, right? Like if you say like, oh, like we're completely like homogeneous, like they're still affecting national policy that affects like policing, right? Or police forces, like there's like or voting rights, right? They're like
Policing, I push back just a little bit. Isn't
policing is very local, but there are some things that are like attempted to be done at the national level. Same thing with like voting rights, right? Like a lot of like voting rights stuff is like done at the state level, but there are things that can be done federally. And so having like these two worlds like kind of colliding in this sense, like you say, like I totally get that it might not be like super important to them, but I would say a lot of these people who have no experience like with racial issues in some cases, like I would definitely put them like on the wrong side of like I would say they're wrong, right? Like that's like the left the lefty in me showing, right? So but like yeah, so like I can understand why it's like yes, like people live in different areas, they have different desires, they have different like things that they focus on in terms of politics, right? Like if I am in a rural area and like the government has done nothing for me, because the last time the government did anything for me was when they like put electricity in like rural Indiana like in the 1960s, right? Like then yeah, I'll probably be like, oh, you're like, why am I paying taxes? Because they're not giving me anything out of this. But it's like they could though. So I completely understand, and I get that that's why it's like the two-part relationship where it's like, oh hey, the government or the elites or whatever you want to call them, right? Like I normally like step away from populist language.
Call them the government.
Yeah,
If we keep calling them the elites, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind.
I was like, let's call it. I am like virulently like anti like populist in general. I think it like leads to conspiracism. But if we can like show them like the government and those institutions are helping them, I feel like it would probably do a world of good. Because right now, having this population that is so disconnected from the rest of the country makes them extremely, like Layman was saying earlier, extremely vulnerable to conspiracy, extremely vulnerable to like ideas that could be like potentially like exceedingly harmful, right? It's like I saw something right now where it was a vast majority of Republicans think that Biden is like an illegitimate president. And it's like, that's not healthy in a democracy when, an overwhelming majority of the like opposition party thinks that the other party was like installed through some sort of like, demon magic, right? Or like whatever the fuck you want to say, like in terms of like election rigging, right? Like that's really dangerous. And I can say, yeah, it's a two-way street saying that we need to like prove to people that like the institutions are be made more just. But like at the same time,
sorry if I'm cutting you off.
No, go for it. Cut me off. Do it. Be mean.
I don't want to be mean.
Conflict.
There was a lot of
hit me, Layman.
There was a lot of stuff. There was just a lot of stuff there. And I just wanted to go back to something you said before about, because this was the actual response to what Tiberius was talking about with the race stuff. So, when it comes to the race stuff, I think that's actually a part of what you both were talking about earlier when it came to like speaking their language and stuff like that, because and trying to reach them as people and stuff like that. Because I think the rhetoric around racial issues, I'm not saying it's not important because I agreed with it earlier, obviously, but I'm saying that maybe there are certain priorities that you have to place, and I think what Tiberius was getting at with the class issues in rural areas is probably something that you should place as place more emphasis on than the racial issues. Does that make sense? Because I think that's important.
I completely agree in the sense that, like, you know, if someone's struggling economically, whether like they're black or white, like they're going to benefit from, like, you know, a robust welfare system. Like I completely.
Well, yeah, but what I mean though is in those areas specifically, right? Because if you're advocating for policies and stuff like that in rural areas, you have to be able to prioritize like your rhetoric and what you were talking about. And so if you were in a electoral situation where you had to sell these sorts of policies to rural areas, bringing in the race issues when you have a really probably like a little more racist of a population because they're so homogenous already. Well, no, seriously, like
I got you. I was like, I was laughing, but like I'm agreeing with what you're saying. Like, keep going. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, like if you have a population like that, like you got to be able to prioritize, and setting those issues aside briefly in order to do something better, and then doing that, you know, save that for later once the rural areas are maybe a little more developed, right? Does that make sense? Is that something we all agree with, Tiberius, Hans?
I agree with most of what you said there, and like it's like, yeah, like I said, like political pragmatism is like essentially my brand, where it's like, yeah, I totally get it. Like if I want to push policy X and I have to say different things for it in, like, you know, city X versus rural county Y, I'm going to say the different arguments to get what, like, this without lying. I'm going to like say what I need to get like my policy passed. I completely agree with that. Like, yes, you have to like shape your messaging based on like where you're at, right? I don't think that's like a particularly like a controversial statement. It's like what I'm like kind of curious or like potentially like nervous about, right, is like how far do you take that, right? Where like if you're like say like in an area that's like, you know, if you could call like again, like this is like entirely hypothetical. Like I'm not like calling out like the rural Americans and like say like, you know, we're say like in this area where like people are like unequivocally racist, right? Like we just like we've done the polls and they're like, yes, non-white people bad, right? And so it's and so at that point, what do you do in that area to, you know, become elected? Like, do you just not talk about those issues? Like, do you like lie to them and say like, no, like I'm also down, like, you know, against the non.
No, you just you just put it on the back burner and you come back to it later when it's more viable to do it. When people, because if you can't talk about race issues with people, these like academic race issues, even if you change your rhetoric and all that stuff, like that helps. But you can't talk about that stuff if they don't have the education to even understand you in the first place.
Or
Like
the
shit
experience.
like pardon, sorry?
Or the experience.
Or the experience, yeah. Like you have to be able to give people the resources to do that first before you can get to that shit. Does that make sense?
You need to you need to connect to them culturally. You need to connect to where their hearts lie. So one thing I like to say is that people who call themselves pragmatic, if they call themselves socialist, they're not actually pragmatic. A liberal.
Called out, you son of.
Is a liberal.
Although
is a liberal.
Hey, to be fair, they think it's the same thing. Like,
no, I think I like.
They call Joe Biden a communist, dude. Like, labels don't mean shit.
Yeah, no, labels do mean no. Locally they do. Nationally maybe not.
That said Joe Biden was a communist, or was it the people on the TV telling them to say that?
Look at John Fetterman, all right?
Okay.
This guy is a typical union socialist, but nobody knows John Fetterman is a socialist. Look him up. He's like 6'5", burly beard. He has tattoos. He doesn't wear any nice suits or anything. This guy is a Trojan horse for progressive ideas. He is a union socialist, but he'll never call himself that because people will not listen to you. But if you say, "Hey, I'm a working class Democrat," you know, say you're center right. You could be for Medicare for all and say you're center right for these local issues. Local politics is so different. Like, for example, for a local community near me, we used to outsource for snow removal during the winter. That would cost us around like $1,000 every time it snowed. This season, we got our own community together, made our own system. Am I lagging?
No.
You're good. We hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fine.
But now we have our own internal way to take care of snow removal. We saved like 80% every single time. That's the way that we sort of like and we didn't decommodify it, but we made it more community-based. We made it more ran by the people. We used our local government in a way that people trusted. We solved that issue. Right now, there's an issue in Pennsylvania with cyber schools. Volunteer fire departments are falling apart. We can't recruit younger people to join the fire force. So now the average age of a firefighter is like 50 years old, and the force is dying out. That's a big issue. Firefighters in Pennsylvania save taxpayers $10 billion. Progressives should be standing up for those issues. People in general that want to support these economic policies, we should all be standing up for these issues. We should be standing up for firefighters. Why can't we make our police reforms be pro-police? Why can't we talk about it in that way? The police officers in these communities, they all went to high school with the police officers. All the people from these communities know the police officers from high school. They are friends. You coming in saying,
they know everybody. They know everybody.
Yeah. And defund the police.
I completely agree with you. I literally did like an entire segment last night.
But we can barely fund the police in rural America. We're losing cops. So we got to find a way to shift that entire thing. But then
wait. I gotta ask. Okay, so rural America is losing cops? I thought we were gaining cops. Like all the cops are leaving the cities to come here because we don't throw like the book at them whenever they make a mistake.
I mean,
just local funding.
I mean,
there's an issue with Pennsylvania in general.
I mean, I'm still kind of in favor of like throwing the book at someone, like if they kill someone by accident. Like it depends like the level of the mistake, right? Like, oh, like you wrote too many parking tickets, like we can have a chat, but like, you know, if you kill someone and like they're like the wrong guy and you're like, oh, like they scared me, it's like I'm in favor of like police accountability, but like I completely agree when you say like, oh, when we have to like do the messaging, right? I remember there was like this poll where like they essentially like asked people, they gave like all the tenets of like the defund the police movement. They're like, you know, like better training, like, you know, providing like social services or like mental health services.
But that's not defund the police,
like instead, right? But like, and then they said, oh, do you support the defund the police? And they're like, fuck no, like support.
But they don't want to defund the police. They want to give the police more money to train them better. So stop.
I know, I agree. Like, I think that's dumb as fuck. That's like a failure. Like, there's a like, it's like the old Ronald Reagan quote where it's like, if you're explaining, you're losing, and then lefties like constantly craft slogans where they have to say it and then immediately start explaining what like they actually mean. It's like, yeah, then you're gonna lose, like, because you like you're not because like people support like the general policies, but then like they have to go back and say like, oh, like I don't actually mean defund the police. I just mean like, you know, reallocate funds like so that like the actual like, you know, armed police like have technically less funding, but like overall,
you're goddamn right.
Money. Yeah, like.
And since I'm on a fucking lefty platform right now, you motherfuckers need to stop Mott and Baileying the fuck out of everybody that you talk to with shit like that. Because like
I've never modded so Bailey in my life. Like,
oh fuck you. You probably have. And I haven't seen it yet, fucker. But something that I see so often is people saying a fucking outrageous thing to me, and then I ask them what the fuck they mean, and then they pivot to a completely different position. Like, I was on a panel the other night where we were talking about police reform, and one fucking Marxist dickhead comes out, and he's like, hey, cops aren't workers. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean cops aren't workers? Are you fucking stupid? And he's like, what I meant was, I meant that they defend private property. And that, in accordance, is in assistance with the bourgeoisie. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, can you please just shut the fuck up?
Marxists aren't even real. They're fake. Like, they're all fake. All this internet stuff is so fake it hurts.
It really does. Like, I feel like I'm just online enough to like complain about it, but like, I honestly miss college days when I was doing like when I was volunteering for the Bernie campaign. Like that was like the best time of my life. Like I was like, you know, I was out and about. I was chatting up people. Like it was
normal people.
Yeah, like no, it was good. Like, I mean, like it was city people because like I was in the city. But like it was fun. Like I went to school in Pittsburgh, so it's like yeah, I knew who John Fetterman is before you told me. I was like, it's nice. Like I like that sort of stuff. But Marxism is someone said, "Don't let me walk away from my position on League." That's my Mott and Bailey. Don't shut the fuck up, Sam. Like we're not talking about League of Legends right now. That's not the conversation. Like rural America.
If it has anything to do with Marxism, just please shut the fuck up, whoever you are.
But anyway, rural cultural issues with all these environmental conditions. So we know that the way people act arises from environmental. But we need to show rural people that it's okay to admit you're a product of your environment in some way. People don't want, and around here, people don't want to say, I need therapy. That's like such an evil word. That's a sign of weakness. They don't want to say we need therapy. They don't want to, dude, 9 out of 10 people that I know grew up with deadbeat drunk dads. 9 out of 10 people. And I don't care if that's anecdotal. This is a theme.
No, that's an empirical. That's empirically true. That's empirically true.
In
Nine
Pennsylvania,
out of 10 dads suck. Like
we consume more alcohol in Pennsylvania than most countries. You go look it up. Our beer consumption is freaking crazy. People around here, that's right what and they go to it because it's socially acceptable too. They consume it in amounts that are so obscene daily, and they think it's okay because it's culturally acceptable. But we need to make sure they know, depression, alcoholism, all these things, it's okay. This happened for a reason. Your environment's like this for a reason. And after you deal with rural people and help them with policy solutions, then they say to you at some point, like, hey, why do you support BLM? Then you say, because these are fellow working people who are born in shitty situations. You don't have to racialize everything to connect people that from different cultures, but you can't literally just attack it right away. You gotta form some you gotta know where you're from, dude. Like, you can't just hop in any old rural community. We're all not the same. The communities across the state are different. I feel like everybody assumes every rural community you can walk in and just say a bunch of stuff with a twang on your accent, and you're going to be able to relate to people. I think more people that are progressive from our areas need more of a platform, which is why I think I need to blow up on YouTube.
Based.
That's true.
Small shameless plug. How do you do, fellow rurals? I too like the farm and fuck. I'll be honest. I live there. I'm a city guy. I hid inside. Whenever it was time to bale hay, I'd be like, fine, Grandpa, I guess. Let me go back to my books, please. But I respect it. It's a lifestyle that some people enjoy. I'm just not personally for me. But yeah, I am blessed to have experienced both, and now I know what I like. So, and then Okulicho, we're just talking about. This is a general rural issues conversation. This is really nice. It's not a specific panel topic. I'm liking how this is riffing. This is feeling pretty good.
Super fucking chill and productive. That's what it is.
How much you curling there, Jolah? Everyone small
now we're pivoting off of the topic.
Yeah, I'm pivoting. Now. Look at that weak ass shit. I don't know about that boy right there, but some of us lift real fucking weights.
Keep me on the track. Keep me on the track, kid. Keep me on the track.
Oh man, fuck. Hey, back in the day, back in college, I was this big and I ran a 20-minute 3-mile. Yeah, I was fucking horrifying. Captain America over here. Yeah, that's right. I see you. Yeah, that's right. Run away, son. Keep on running. You'll just die tired. Sorry. Anyway, sorry. Flexing.
Something that I wanted.
Why did I do that? I just I saw red. I just went. I was like, it's time. It's time to establish the dominance. I am. The lot of testosterone. Neo Gaia, I'm sorry. Normally I'm not like this. I can't stop when I see a fellow alpha male. I have to lock horns. There's nothing else. He was challenging me. I felt it. I felt the need. I was like, should I just hello? Yes. I also I don't have any I don't have weights, but should I curl my computer chair? Yes, I also enjoy this. A little bit of the arm.
Oh yeah. Well, I got V-Bucks. I could buy.
I'm a man. I just made this money to lift this $300,000 chair. Do you want a $300,000 chair? No way. Because you get no pussy.
I was like, I can lift almonds.
These are called. These are called spirals.
There's that just. I mean, I know the forearm workout where where you do the hand rotations. What the fuck's a spiral? That's I wiggle. Okay, that's. Okay.
This is actually a really good thing to go back to the original topipic because
I'm so sorry. Yeah, but back to real shit.
Back to real shit. No, but this is a part of it. I'm gonna tie it in. So, oh fuck, what did I just hit on my PC? What the fuck just happened? Okay, we're good. Something that you were talking about a bunch of people in rural areas don't want to seek mental help and shit, right? And get mental help for their mental health. Mm-hmm. And this actually goes back to what you said earlier, Hans, about positive masculinity, because you can easily fit that within that kind of traditional masculinity framework where it's hey, you have to admit to yourself that there is something fucking wrong with you, and you have to have the discipline and the responsibility to be able to go and create the opportunity for yourself to get some fucking help for that shit. Admit to yourself that there's something fucking wrong with you and you need to fix it. And that's something that you can easily fit within a masculine framework. because you're going to come across those sorts of values in rural areas. They're social conservatives. And you can fit that within the sort of motivations behind social conservatism very easily. So
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I can vibe with that. It's like I remember having a chat with Counterpoints, and we disagree on like a good amount of stuff, but like we were very much like in like sync about like, oh, like we need to improve education, like we need to improve like our civic institutions to make them like more both like accessible to people, but also like more useful in like how they respond to like problems. Totally vibe with that. Is Jolah dead? Is he okay? Like I don't want a man just like
I don't know
like,
what
just,
I didn't know what was going on
I
below
saw
the
him
neck
just
there.
slump, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, did we just watch a man have a heart attack like live on my stream? Like, I don't feel comfortable with that. Like, I'm just, but yeah, I'm actually, I have to I have to make a run real quick. I'll be right back. Tiberius, you seem to have it put together, and you were not there for my ridiculous display of masculinity, so you're in charge while I'm
Oh,
gone.
I saw that alpha chat energy, and I just couldn't handle it. I had to step away for a minute, man. I was just,
No.
damn.
Like, all right. Well, you're in charge anyway. I'll be right back. It's mostly because like actually just I need to use the bathroom and I need another beer. So like I'll be.
Fair enough.
I felt
We got
personally
you.
attacked when you talked about alcoholism, but like I'm not. That was a joke. But I'm totally secure. Like I'll be I'll be right back.
Not fooling anyone here.
It's like.
All right, everyone. Now this show has been co-opted by the Mask Off podcast. No, I'm kidding. I don't. We kind of had gotten actually to the end of like that section, so I'm sure we could take it in some given different direction. You guys seem to be wanting to push it towards issues. That's fine. I'm kind of the economic. I don't know.
No, let's go back to the economic. I just wanted to make that one like social point really quick. I didn't plan on sticking on it, and Hans isn't here to continuously keep flexing and shit for us to stick on it to force us to. So you can go back to the economic. I'd rather have that conversation myself.
Well, so. I mean, some of this I can get into as far as just like what's the jobs that are going to be viable for for these communities, and at least I talked about the extraction ones. That's probably the given. The question is manufacturing going to be a big thing? And for a long time, there was just like no way in hell. But then something came online a couple of years ago that actually makes sense for this kind of community. 3D printing.
Really?
Yeah, 3D printing is actually better for more rural communities because you don't need the massive industrial base that you need for like most industrial plants, where you need it like a damn near a nuclear reactor off to the side, and then you need all these materials coming in by railroad and whatnot. You can literally do it in a garage. That's cool because as a factory thing, it allows people to get custom parts that are just printed off in a machine instead of machined and milled and extruded and all that stuff that you would have to do it through normal tool and die. That's a great market for them to be in, and so I'm kind of very interested to see if that actually helps them. Services, I mean, they're gonna have the same thing everybody else has. It's just you guys are gonna have bigger, or I'm sorry, more urban people are gonna have that bigger in scale, because you're just going to need more teachers, but also the few things that you can only get in a city, right? Such as like an astrophysicist or something, right? You're not going to have that in the rural folks. But I don't know any service that is predominantly going to go to the rural communities. And then I don't know of any service that like is so massive that you don't see it everywhere. So could be worse, could be better, I guess.
Fill me in. Like, what are we talking about? Sorry.
Well, I'm trying to frame out a conversation, but I don't know exactly where we're going to take it yet.
Okay.
So.
I heard it's like different industries, like.
Yeah, like what's the kind of the future for rural industry, or for like rural industry, right? Because I said you're going to have extraction services. That's going to be the bread and butter. But we were talking a little bit about like 3D printing and how it's changing the manufacturing base. So that might be something that rural folks can get on board with. And then I have no idea what's different on cities versus. I'm sorry, I don't know anything for services that are going to be any kind of better than you can get in cities.
Right.
You're going to have a lot that's overlapped. Everyone needs doctors, everyone needs teachers and shit. But like the only thing that I can see here is that are like urban exclusive jobs, like being an astrophysicist or something, right? Like urban isn't going to get into that. But is there anything that they can get by themselves?
I think there's this is like largely theoretical right now, but one big positive potentially from COVID was showing how you could essentially like do a job working from like anywhere, right? Like if it's like based on the computer, as long as you have like an internet connection, you can work there, right? Or you can work somewhere, right? And so I see a lot of people talking like, oh, look, that means that we can have like say, so you can have like tech jobs from San Francisco being done by people who are living like in the suburbs of like Atlanta, right? Like different shit like that. And I see no reason why, if we can provide the necessary internet infrastructure, that these like jobs can't be available to people living anywhere in the country. And so I think something that could potentially like be like a backbone of like say like middle class like areas in the country, and honestly like because they'd probably pay less because like they could like pay like the like various areas as opposed to like like instead of paying a programmer like 150K like in San Francisco, you could be paying like a programmer like 90K in like some like random like rural town. Like if you provide the infrastructure, this could also be a way of like having like less massive like people like going to cities for the quote unquote good jobs. Like I think that's entirely possible. I don't even say that that's a good or bad thing, but I think there is like the potential for that distribution of online labor that before this pandemic wasn't really envisioned as possible, that I definitely think can exist. Not that like say rural areas will have like something special about them compared to like urban areas or vice versa. It's just that like the broader like economy that where like a lot of like the new middle class jobs are like coming into or existing, that's going to be potentially available to anyone with an internet connection regardless of where they are. If you're a tech bro and you want to live in the forest, as long as you have like a Google Glass like connection, like you'll be fucking crushing it, right? So
yeah, and working remotely will definitely be able to provide people with opportunities to move to more affordable rural areas if they want to. So the question is like whether or not they would be contributing much to that community is a different question, though. I'm not sure if that would really have many significant effects.
Right. Do you feel like I think it's, gosh, I go back and forth about this. I'm a huge fan of like community interaction. Like I was like that guy in college who did like 17 different clubs, and I was like always there, like whether it was like at like group meetings or like at parties and stuff.
Unitarianism,
and I'm just like
very, very good.
Yeah, and it's like I want people to have these environments. Like there's something a lot of lefties like don't really account for this, and I know Joel was talking about this earlier about like how like communities like are kind of like falling apart, right? A lot of like the basic infrastructure of like the basic social infrastructure of American communities are kind of falling apart. And even though as we're improving, even if like you're in a city, you're atomized, like you don't really like know a lot of people aside from like your like specific like work or friend group. People have like these extra like worker communities, whether it was like your church or whether it was like like your school board or something like that. Like you have like other like, and I'm very much in favor of like trying to like bring those back. I want like this vitalization of like philosopher leagues and cafes and like sports groups. Like I would
religious institutions.
I would fucking love like to play like rugby with the boys like for the next like 20 years of my life. Like just go down like like a club and like play some sports with some guys, or like join like an intermittent like powerlifting league. Like
that's what they do here.
There's like plenty of like things we could do, but again, that's all like I feel like that's like a different flavor of social infrastructure that like we would have to pay for, because that I don't think any of that's gonna like make money. You know what I mean? So it's like it's hard to like get that, but also
yeah, that sounds more like a cultural pressure than it would an economic pressure.
Right? Well, you need to use the capital, or you need to get more capital into an area for them to be able to flourish as a community. I would say, like right now, what are the ways money leaves these communities? Amazon, Walmart, taxes. What are ways that money comes in? Investment from the government and like private businesses, and also through programs, you can say like Medicaid and all that stuff. That's how money comes into an area. I think we need to focus on what Biden said about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh can be the place where the windmills are constructed. But I think something like solar panels, and this can be done privately, and it can be encouraged through something like a national infrastructure bank, which would put up 0% interest rate loans to spur innovation for infrastructure and especially green projects. I think there should be a private business for like every 10 communities in Pennsylvania, where I am, that manufactures and actually uh, hooks up like solar panels on the people's houses, or if they want solar panels in their yards. In Texas, they actually have a really good system with tax credits. So I want to see more tax credits for solar panels. I want to see solar panels manufactured in these communities as a way to bring capital back. And the green infrastructure in general, shovel ready jobs is something I want to see back in rural areas. I don't think we should forfeit the community aspect, but in order to get that back, how else do you guys have any ideas of how you get that capital in these areas, or do you just let the areas?
I'm just not sure if like getting capital into these areas would necessarily lead to like a more communitarian culture, just because there's more like services available or stuff to do. I think it would be better for people, but
Right now
as
what
far as
happens
like
is,
achieving that specific goal, like large scale cities and stuff like that are, I would argue, probably less communitarian than rural areas are. And those places obviously have a lot more capital in them and a lot more job opportunities and a lot more things to do in them than a rural community does.
Right.
well, I think specifically for these areas, each economy has like its own carrying capacity for how many businesses or sector that can like fit there. So we have a new bar and a new diner opening every single year. But the issue is, if there's a new successful business, an old one closes that isn't doing as good because there simply
Yeah.
isn't money to go around. And when that happens, it is damaging for community. When you have entire city blocks that are just vacant, that literally have nothing in them, I think the government should be doing something, or the government can make programs so communities can manage this themselves. It doesn't need to be top down, but the money needs to be allocated through federal levels, because we have obvious budget issues at the state level. But like Scranton, Pennsylvania is like a ghost town. There are so many buildings all across this state that are suffering from blight, that people are just letting fall apart from private ownership. I think like revitalizing those buildings and all that's good. Projects that have done really good where I'm from are like murals across the town that celebrate our town's history, that just makes things look a little bit brighter. And all that requires money flowing. So I do agree that cities do have technical capital flowing through them, but I don't think people really have that capital accessible. And it's a totally different dynamic for these areas.
It's like what I would say for we can talk about like each like individually, right? So like I lived in a city. There was a lot to do, right? It was more just based on like like whether you had the capital like to be able to like participate. So I think that like we have like fundamentally different issues. In the case of like of an urban capacity, it's more about giving people the financial ability to not like say constantly be working, so they can use all the amenities that exist, right? Like in the case of like my like college career, I would like I had like a really great scholarship for school, and it was awesome. So I'd go to school, but I also had say like 15 hours of work like during the week. So I'd like go to school, I would go to work, but then like when I wasn't studying, like I was going out with the friends. I was like I was hitting up like different clubs, or like I was doing like clubs on campus. I was like working out like at the powerlifting club, or like all this like different shit. Right? It's like all this like in the case of like urban like amenities, it's like they're all there, but a lot of it's just like whether or not people have the time to access them. In the case of rural, it's like like when I would go home for like summer break or like Christmas break, right? I would go home and it's like, all right, so like I can chat up with like my friends that still like exist in that area, but the like basic amenities like aren't there. Like what I would notice when I was home, I would like get kind of like cabin fevery. Like I would get kind of stir crazy because I'm like, oh man, like I have so much free time to do stuff, but I don't have like stuff to do, right? Like whenever I would like do something, it was because I'd be like inviting people over, like I'd going over to like a friend's house like to do something, or like potentially would go see a movie or something, but like the infrastructure is not there. So essentially, like what I would say is like for fixing both these problems, for urban areas, it's about giving people more time to access the amenities that currently exist. And when for urban areas, it's about building amenities so people can use the time that they like have that they are currently like not using like particularly productively, right? And I'm not I'm not like harping on like people like in rural like areas. I'm saying like, hey, like if you had more like stuff to do, you'd probably be doing like more fun shit as opposed to like like opioid use and like alcoholism, right? Like yeah, so someone like riff on me because like I think that's kind of like my basic spot of like how to fix like this like on like different like societal levels, right? Urban, it's like everyone's like tired and working and stuff, and for rural, it's like there's not a lot to do, right? That's kind of like things like, oh, like are we getting drunk in a cornfield again? Like that's fun, but like fuck, like I would love to do more, right? But there's nothing to do, so yeah. Like so someone say something like I don't have to call on you
I don't have anything.
Raise your hand, class. Like how are you doing right?
Do y'all think
Like
phones are a problem?
Tiberius in the back row. How are you feeling?
I got it.
Yeah.
So
Are phones a problem, Tiberius? Do you think phones and technology are causing an issue with cultures developing in society?
I mean,
Video games?
I mean, yeah, in the same way that like the fucking printing press did, right? Is that I'm sorry, like I feel like this is a trap, so I just don't even know if I want to go down this one. Of course they're gonna change how people develop and how people interact and whatever. It's just like is it bad? Some of it I think's bad, but I mean that genie ain't going back in the bottle at this point. It's here. We're gonna have to deal with it. We're gonna have to figure out like the problems with that. So table. When it comes to like what Hans was talking about, where there's like nothing to do out here, like that's actually kind of like why I was talking about why people just want to, will pack up and move to these a little bit more denser areas because, I mean, literally the joke here is there's only two things to do here, or sorry, get hammered and fuck. I mean, it's just that's kind of all there is. I mean, you might be able to do a movie every now and again or something, but there's no country concerts here. There's no NASCAR. Whatever the hell. Sorry, I'm having trouble just thinking up scenarios and things in my head. But you got to go drive to Indy. You got to drive to Evansville. You got to drive to Terre Haute or Bloomington.
Everything
the regional
you're saying,
hub.
I'm just like you're like hitting me with my childhood. I was like, fuck, like these are all like the places that I think of like too, and I'm like, oh, like for me it was South Bend, but like I totally get the
Right.
vibe. Like,
yeah, for you it's probably South Bend, Lafayette, Indianapolis, and then maybe Marion. But I mean, it's just like those are the places you go if there's anything going on. But those places are literally cities with 100,000 people or at least like 75. That's not rural America, at least for me. That's small America, but it's not rural America where you're dealing with this town that's got 400 people and then up the highway is the 4,000 person town, and then you might have the one that breaks 10K. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of Kansas and Indiana and Illinois, but it just doesn't hit people's radars very well.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of activities are you talking about? Because there's a lot of things that people I know can be doing. Like try to get people hiking. I try to get people out to eat in my restaurants. I try to get people golfing. Let's play all that stuff. So what are people looking for?
Yeah, I'm gonna meme here for just a second. Well, you just ain't gonna get a bunch of people to get around and go to a museum now, are you? The country, we country bumpkins, we a little different, right? No, there's plenty of stuff that people will do that you can find out on average. You can get most people to go out to eat for dinner. You can get most people to go to the movies, that kind of thing. But there's definitely a different social hub that I find significantly different, and that is it's largely like the nightlife or particularly the weekend life. Around here, it's people get together, they get on a boat, they go fishing, or they just go drinking or whatever, and there's a bonfire, or there's a boating trip, or 4-wheeler riding, whatever. Whenever I see this in the cities, it's nightclubs, it's what the hell? I can't think of the words for it, but the social gatherings are completely different.
It's nightclubs, it's bars, it's parties, it's like theater. Like I got you.
Yeah. So like there is just a completely different modus operandi when we're talking about like how we country folk socialize. But on the other side of that is that is there anything significantly different between big cities and rural folks, and that is, I would say, when they go to watch the um, the Billing Ball concert, right, or whatever, that kind of thing. They're going to go to at least a regional center, if not like the big cities, to go watch that because that's where that happens. And so that's where you get that kind of exodus out, where people will move, or they will, at least commute into things of entertainment or massive social engagements.
Right. It's like and I'm not sure if there's like any like particular way to solve that, like the big meme, right? Like the big thing for like my like town was like, every Friday night, like in the fall, there'd be a football game, right? Or like we had like the basketball game, right? And like I had a small town. It was like in the city limits, it was probably about like 3,000 ish, but like in the county, you'd have about like like eight like 10,000, like more like a solid amount of people, right? And the two big things, like my school didn't have a lot of funding, right? But like the big things that you knew were funded, we had like a massive bleachers for like our football games and like a massive like beautiful gym for like our basketball games, right? Because we knew that those were like the social like situations for like our town. And I think part of making this whole thing work would be, in the case of these smaller communities, or even just like communities in general, is giving them more access to events like that, right? Like whether it's like I think like Tiberius like said it really well, but like giving people a nightlife, right? And that's a big thing, because part of like human experience is being able to do fun stuff when you're not working. And most people work 9 to 5s or whatever you want to call that, right? So like they're free in the nighttime, and if there's nothing to do in the nighttime, then you have like if you have if you have like two options, which is like drinking or like something else, like what are you supposed to do? And I think providing those opportunities for people is the best way of giving them, stuff that makes life worth living, right? Like, like none of us, like I don't have any like grand aspirations for life. Like, I just want to make a decent living. I want to like, if I ever decide to have a family, like I want to be able like to afford, like, have my kids like, go to college and shit, right? And for me, it's like, I want to be able to do stuff. And doing the stuff, and that's why like I almost like lean so heavily urban, like in like my like preferences, is because even if like I'm struggling, like do stuff like financially, there's always stuff I can do in that area. And so I think the amount of effort it takes to provide more stuff to do in rural areas is going to have to come from some kind of like external investment. And like Joel made a really good point about like, oh, like the money going in versus the money coming out. Like a lot of the money coming in, a lot of it's like either just like massive like international or like national conglomerates and government spending, right? And so if we have to like have those types of spending, if we're trying to like prop up these communities, so, like people like can live like fulfilled lives, then like I'm totally fine with that. I think that's like something that, as Jolah would say, a progressive liberal, in terms of what I want. I want to give those people opportunities, like whether it's like whether it's just a night at the fucking bowling alley, or like giving someone in their 30s and 40s some like kind of like intramural sports to do, and like have the community like go around those events, like, and that's more like communitarian. Like I'm a slut for communitarianism. Like I love that shit so much. Like I just want people to like. I'm a very social guy, so like, I want people to have fun with their friends. That's kind of like my entire thing. Like the entire purpose of life is like enjoying with the people that you enjoy spending time with, and so I want to give people more opportunities to do that. So call me naive, call me fairy dusting, but like yeah, that's what I want. And if that means like fucking investment in like local YMCA's and shit, so people can do like shit together, then yes, like of course do that. So
But even that, when we talk about diseases of despair, it doesn't completely make sense how like if somebody's happier in a rural area versus an urban area, because like having the ability to be in nature, go fishing, and all that stuff, rural areas actually have a pretty low rate of like mental health issues compared to urban areas. So I'm trying to think, is it just a product of the new world that a lot of these people are in bad places? There's way too much information for us to ever comprehend. There's no media literacy, even for people like us who are very involved in media and in reading and in all that stuff. I'm sure we all have our own mental health issues, personally and whatever. So is it just that these people are like, they don't know how to access this stuff in a healthy way? Because it's not like they're
my question for you, Jolah, right? Like,
Monster, but there is a consistent sense of community. There is that sense of community. Maybe the football games are the biggest thing in town, but there's still people that have each other's backs, and people in cities are a lot more isolated and everything. So I'm just trying to think. There has to be something bigger here that we're missing.
like small like side note question for like Jolah, right? Like you talked about like how say city areas are have like higher like degrees of like mental illness, right? But like I've seen like similar things versus like say poorer people versus like wealthier people, like in terms of like diagnoses, right? Like I would ask like specifically, like I'm not sure what data has like borne this out. Like this is like entirely me spitballing, so I'd love to like read more about this at some point. But how much of it do you think is like there's more mental illness in cities, or like more mental illness among let's say like wealthier people versus like say poor people or more like rural people, just because like they don't want to go to therapy and get diagnosed, right? Like I have plenty of like friends that like probably have some kind of disorder, but like because they've never gone to a therapist or gone to like a mental health specialist, they've never been diagnosed, so they're not like dealing with that like in the same way. Like what would you like say to that specifically?
Yeah, sure. You could say poor people in general. The only thing I was really contesting is the idea that having nightclubs and concerts is going to be better for you than being somewhere that you're able to fish and everything. Because I ask people, I try to get them out to do this stuff. They just don't want to do it. They don't have, they aren't encouraged to do it. They don't feel like doing it. They feel like getting drunk. It's a cultural thing. It's been established for a long time in this area, and it's not being broken up anytime soon. There's beautiful things to do in Pennsylvania. All over the place.
Agreed.
People just don't want to do it.
Agreed.
And I guess it be alcoholics in nightclubs instead of doing it in cornfields. Like you said, I just feel like there's a bigger cultural thing here. But like you said, is it because of poverty? Because a lot of the people I know are actually pretty well off financially, personally, for this area. You have to remember too, relative rates of like income and stuff is going to be varied when you compare it to a city versus rural areas. You go a house in a rural area that costs $25,000 will cost $125,000 in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So we have to this now we're getting into a whole like we'd have to have like a 2-hour stream reviewing a research document for this conversation.
I'm so down for that at some point in the future. That sounds awesome. Like Tiberius, you raised your hand like a good boy. What do you
Yeah,
like,
I know. I'm sorry, I got to do this beta chat thing. I got to let the alphas
guys,
play.
I mean, like, I'm just saying. Like, what can I? Oh shit! Nope, not gonna. Like, this is my favorite fucking tank top. Like, I heard like some fabric ripping, and I was like, I've lost 3 shirts to streams, and I have like a debate royale tomorrow, and I can't do it again.
This is the real toxic masculinity, ripping up your own shirts, man. Come on.
I have so many shirts that I've loved that I've lost. Like RIP in chat. Like they're so like fuck, man. Like there's great shirts, but like the buttons are weak. So like, what am I supposed to do? Like the worst thing is when you're at a party and someone's like, "Yo, man, like I heard you tore off your shirt last time." I was like, "Yeah," and they're like, "I bet you couldn't do that again." And of course, I have to do it because I've been called out. But like, sorry, go back, Tiberius.
I got you, man. I got you. So rolling this back, like there's the question that's kind of asked, like, well, what's the difference between like the culture of like the rural and the urban, because you see like social ills manifest different, like like depression, that kind of thing, like like mainstream mental illness, if I can say that right, is largely more of an urban thing. However, the one thing that we do see that predominates rural communities is suicide. All of a sudden, like once you hit a threshold, like suicide goes crazy. What I definitely think here is twofold. One, I think there's actually a point where if you don't have enough social interaction, then you just lose your collective crap. You go insane and you kind of do bad things to yourself. So I think that's actually why you see that the number is so high in like Wyoming and Alaska and whatnot. So take that conversation, put it off to the side. The culture part about how like what makes people happier is that I think there's a fundamental thing about more communal living in rural communities that is more actually invigorating to the human psyche. We can get there in a second. But the reason why they have like ruralites have so much more of an issue in dealing with their like personal issues instead of their communal issues is that I think it is the culture. Like there is a large, tradition of, you got to be your own man, take care of yourself, or take care of your family first. And there is an aversion to saying, yes, I need help. And it's not just for mental illness. It's for medical help. It's for physical help. It's for monetary help. There's definitely an aversion here because it is seen as weakness and it is kind of seen as, a taboo or a faux pas. So I think that actually is a serious issue. And if you guys want to tackle why I think urbanites are so much more myopic, we can do that too.
Yeah, that sounds like a great. Right now we're about an hour 40 in. You said that you want to keep this under 2 hours, so like that seems like a great last topic. As to like we've been building up rural people, so let's start tearing down the urbans. As the resident urban, like I'll be real, I fucking love Pittsburgh. Like I love Pennsylvania, but like Pittsburgh was it was my college town. I had a lot of fun there. 4 years of great experiences, great people, and yeah, I'm ready to chat. So how about you? You hit us first, and then we'll riff off of what you got.
All right. So what my thing is this, and I could be wrong, but when I look at rural people, they all kind of know each other, or they're in communities where at least you kind of know of like a family name, or everyone knows someone. It's as weird as that sounds, but you kind of have to be here to get it.
I totally do. Like
okay.
Like my mom, it's like coming from school. Like I went to like a university of like 8,000 people, and like I was like one like the most social people on that campus. I knew maybe 200 people at best, right? Like when I come home, my mom knows everybody. She knows everyone's family, everyone's last name. She'll be like, "Oh, hey, like like Dolores, like something Haver, like passed away like last weekend." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, who the fuck is that?" And she's like, "Well, she went to church with us like 2 weeks, like 2 years ago. Like, don't you know her?" And I'm like, "No, I don't. But like, you seem to. Like, how?" But keep going.
Yeah. So
I'm glad we kept on the topic of rural shit while I was taking a shit.
Thanks for letting me know that. No, so what I'm getting at is that when I can piss off like somebody in the middle of town, and then I get an hour or like a couple hours later, get a phone call from my dad saying you need to stop that shit. That is the power of the individual, and as screwy as this sounds for some people, is that when you're in a rural community, you realize how powerful you are as an individual to change people's lives. Because if you do some bad shit, everyone knows about it and they tell you, and it's bad. Now, on the other side of that is that when you're in a city, you're literally surrounded by a sea of fucking people. It is ridiculous. You will literally have instances where you will talk to somebody and you will never ever see them again. And I think that fundamentally changes the human psyche on a fundamental level, is that ruralites see people as like individuals, and like more urbanites tend to see people as cogs in a machine. Because I've talked to people that are from rural communities versus that are from rural versus urban, and urbans are usually a lot more pessimistic.
I think it's kind of like in response to that, I would say it's basically a necessity, right? Like if in the case of like say like my daily life as a college student, right? I would wake up, go to the bus stop, get on the bus. There's like 30 people on the bus. I would go to school. I have 4 classes that day. There's like 30 different people in each class. So I've already like seen like say 100 plus people, and then I would go to work and I would see like another like 50 people, all of which I kind of know, right? So I kind of know a lot of people. But like throughout the course of my day, whether it's like seeing random people like on campus or random people in town, over the course of like a regular day for me, I would see 300 plus human beings, and they'd be like and maybe like 50% of them are people I would see on a regular basis, but there's like say 150 randos that I would never see again, right? Like what you said, like, oh, like you see like one person, then you never see them again. So it's almost like a necessity of living in a city to not know the name of like every person that you interact with, because it's physically impossible. Like
Obviously.
Yeah, right. And I consider myself, I'm a fucking social butterfly, right? Like I fucking love that shit. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. Like that's like my whole shit. Like I love that so much. It would be completely exhausting trying to like get to know every person. I can know everyone like in my classes by name and stuff. But again, like that would change semester by semester. So like various semesters, I would like I'd have the names of like 100 people in classes, and I have names of like 100 people in the various orgs and like clubs that I was a part of. And there's like a, I'm not sure like how base this is. I saw like like an article or study on this, and then it was just like the human brain can only really like comprehend like 200 people as like close friends, and like everything else beyond that just kind of like noise, right? And in a rural community like where you're coming from, I totally get it, right? Where it's like, oh, like, if you have a town of 400 people, you know the names of 200 people, and of those 200 people, they know everybody else, right? So like you have a connection to like every other human being. In a city, in the case of Pittsburgh, it's like, like 500,000 people there. It's like, oh, I have, you know, I can
You
only,
piss off Johnny and no one knows Johnny.
yeah,
That's basically, yeah.
yeah, and I'm not sure like how you're ever going to end that in terms of the urban experience, because it's kind of like I said, it's kind of impossible even for like the most social among us, among us guys, like we got it, but like
It's Layman. Kill Layman.
kill
Eject him
Layman.
in space.
It's like no, but like actually like and I think that's like a basically a different like environment, but like the case I would make for like saying that that's like potentially preferable or enjoyable is that I probably know about like say closely about the same number of people as you do in your rural town, but because there's more people like in like my urban center, I can decide who to interact with and like what things interest me. Like, I have like say like 20 buddies in my powerlifting club that I crush weights with like 4 like nights a week, and then I have like my Dungeons and Dragons club that I play Dungeons and Dragons with like twice a week, and then I have like say like like 20 people in like my college Democrats organization that I talk to like once a week, and I have like 20 people in my like Bernie Sanders like like volunteer org that I talk to, and then I have like like the 20 people in my classes that I consider my friends, and all those people have like common interests with me that I can like pull into better, and that's like my basic like argumentation for like why like I think like rural living is like potentially like not superior but like better for someone like me, is because I very much like cultivated social spaces, and having all those like options lets me cultivate it in a way that I want, as opposed to like say like living in a rural area. Essentially you're guaranteed like that 200 like person cap, and you're guaranteed to know everybody, but like what happens if you like don't vibe or don't like people? Like I hated living in my small town because I didn't fit in, right? Like I was a bookish nerd, right? And I was like, I didn't get like this until like I got into college. So like I just didn't jive, right? Like I played football and stuff, but like I wasn't that kind of guy, right? And I had friends, but like it wasn't for me. For like if you're in the rural area and you're the odd duck, you're like the odd like the odd person out, you're kind of fucked. But in the case of the city, if you're the odd person out, you can just find another group. Sorry, that was like a monologue, but
No, I'm actually like 100% on board with you. So.
Based Hans coming in at the end of the hour just absolutely obliterates arguments for rural existence. Just completely unstoppable, too strong. I'm sorry.
I think you would. I think you jumped the shark a little bit there, but okay.
Little genocidal of you,
Like, oh, just
but that's okay.
I was gonna say, like, I don't think you understood sold rural folk. I mean, it's just there's a definitely like pros and cons to living in rural folks, and there's definitely pros and cons to living in urban. Like, I say I like the suburbs for a reason. I kind of like a little bit of both. I like the ability to kind of just fucking get behind my picket fence and lock my door and not have to deal with anybody for a week. But
the fucking radical centrist fucking
shit,
the grill pill take. Like I want people when I want them, and I don't want them when I don't want them. Like boom.
Well,
like,
no. Okay, so here's the real thing with me. Just as a disclaimer, is that people are like, oh well, what does Ty say he hates all the leftists and shit? Well, number one, I do, but on the real,
I'm
real,
right
though,
here. Like.
Yeah. No, on the real though, what this conversation comes down to is that I am very particular in who I like, and it's I haven't even figured out like all of it yet. There are people that I instantly know I like, and I know I'm just going to get along with them very well. And there's people that I'm like, this is an absolutely good person, and there's no reason I should dislike them, but they just don't interest me. And unfortunately, the vast majority of people fall into that they just don't interest me category. And so. Like if I'm with somebody who doesn't interest me, I just get tired out. It is physically exhausting to be around them. But then all of a sudden it's like I'm engaging with people that I am like, and I'll stay up for literally all night until the sun comes up just chatting about shit. So yeah, it's really fun. And yeah, you got your rant in, so I had to get mine in.
No, it's good. It's good. Jolah, layman, what are your rants / closing statements about urban? I keep saying Earl and Urban, and I don't understand why. Rural and urban. Oh, hello, but
Tax loopholes on small businesses if they want to. So they
he's bringing it back to
specifically-
real shit.
Yeah,
we're talking about like
okay,
the
okay,
philosophy of
I'm
what it
closing.
means to exist, and you're just like, yo, give me some tax breaks, like.
Yeah, fuck. So
He's a true right winger after all.
shut the fuck up. Fuck you. Tax breaks for local startups, local businesses in rural areas, like specifically for rural areas, will help increase employment in rural areas. And then at the same time, public investments in education and welfare would, in addition to that, help attenuate impoverished circumstances. And if you gave people UBI, they can move the fuck out if they still fucking hate rural life so much. And there's more job opportunities in the city. That's inevitably going to happen anyway. You're not going to have a fucking entire nation of rural living with no cities ever. So obviously, the potential dissolution of some rural communities will probably happen no matter what. But I think it can attenuate it with some of the prescriptions I just gave. And that's my final, that's my overall thoughts on the matter. Rural communities, like everybody said, have their own pros and cons that I pretty much unanimously agreed with everybody on. Even though I was taking a shit for half of that conversation. It was a really big shit.
I
like a
was
really
wondering
fucking big
where you
shit.
went. I was like, is he okay? Like, because you didn't leave the call. You just kind of like disappeared for a bit. I was like, is it
I just had to take a shit.
like, okay, all right, that's fine.
The high quality content.
Yeah, it's like, oh god, like, all right, moving on. Jolah, what you got? You've been stewing this whole time. I've seen.
Oh,
you.
and if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter, lay_man_, and I
You
have
were
a
gonna
YouTube
do
where I
that
do
at the end. You
conversations.
broke the format. What's wrong with you?
Oh, I
dude?
thought that was part of it.
No,
I thought that was
this
part
is
of
just
the
like
end
her
statement.
closing rant. Like then we'll do plugs at the end.
Okay,
Like, it's like just
go
like-
on, go on, continue. I'm fine.
You can juggle two things with two hands. Excellent technique.
Okay.
Virtually
I
impossible.
can.
So, talking to somebody who builds stuff, all right? And he put on Facebook that he was mad about lumber prices. And I told him there's an issue with the supply chain. There's a global lumber shortage. And he got mad at me and said, there's lumber at the local hardware store. There is no global lumber shortage. You know, people like that might get mad at you when you try to explain complex ideas to them. But I urge, I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, the moral of the story is people from rural areas might not know what they're talking about all the time. Even if they don't know what they're talking about, even if they're really bad people, even if they are racist or whatever, treat them and try to treat them as like normal people. Try to understand them, be nice to them. You literally get nothing from being mean to
Come
people,
in.
even if they are bad people. I am mean to rural people sometimes when they're being dumb. But try to treat everybody with respect because you literally can't gain anything from looking down on people. You can't gain anything at all from being condescending towards anybody. Even if it feels good to unleash and say, hey, you guys are dumb. You guys are too busy drinking beer to ever care about your communities. Even if you want to say that, it's not going to ever, like, there's literally no scenario in which coming down hard on somebody like that is going to work. So just do your best to plant seeds of progress as much as you can. And hopefully in the future, those seeds will result in good progress. If that doesn't work, then the other way wouldn't have worked anyway. So just, be cool and eat your vitamins.
Be cool, be kind. You gotta have some kind of sponsorship, Joel. Like, Jesus Christ, like you just keep wheeling those out. So, but
Muted.
everyone, thank you so much for coming. I think this was like a super productive conversation. We had a lot of like.
Hey, you're muted.
Hans, you're
Like-
fucking muted, motherfucker. Nobody can fucking hear
Oh,
you,
no.
bitch.
My chat could hear me. I only muted myself on Discord. I think this was a great place to stop. I think we all had our excellent closing statement. I want to thank all the gang for being here. I love personally smaller panels. I think panels 4 to 6 people are the best because you can actually have a conversation as opposed to dunking on someone or someone will say something and then goes through 3 people and then the last person's like, well, I'd like to respond to person 1, but their point ended 20 minutes ago and I can't. And now I'm gonna have to completely rerun this entire conversation to respond.
1v1s.
Hey, just
2v2s are the
platform me on this one for just a second.
Oh yeah,
It's time to kill the 8-person panel. No more.
Yeah.
oof. Agreed. I agree with that. All right, so everyone, all of my amazing panelists, even if you disagree with them, I think all of them are respectively incredibly intelligent. They have like a great basis in their views and their points. Obviously, because I am like the most lefty person on this panel, I am the best person, clearly, because that's how online politics work, motherfucker. But everyone who participated, you're all fantastic. And now we'll start with Layman because he was so interested in doing this at the beginning. Feel free to like drop your links in my chat. Tell people who you are, where they can find you, all that sort of stuff again. And then everyone, I'm gonna like have this VOD here, so you're welcome like to steal it if you want to like upload it somewhere else. So
Yeah, I just need to open up your fucking chat real quick. Just give me a second. Yeah. So my name is Layman, and like I said like 5 minutes ago, I have a YouTube channel and a Twitter account where I talk about political shit and philosophy shit and even sometimes personal shit too, and it's kind of a mixed bag, but there's a lot of good shit. I think my most recent video on my channel is a debate that I hosted about nationalism with a bunch of different figures that are relatively known in this community.
It was based. That was a great fucking debate. I reviewed it on my stream. It's fantastic.
That's right. I forgot to talk to you about that. I was meaning to talk to you about that at some point. Ask you what you think. Yeah. Now I know what you think, so that's good. Tiberius made a cameo in it too.
I did.
You did.
Yeah,
I remember you came in, like you went to visit Connor, and I just see you in the fucking. I was like, "Is that Tiberius? Like, where the fuck is?"
Dude, I was not expecting him to show up on camera. It was fucking funny as fuck. Enternax was having a really shitty day that day too.
Oh god,
like cheered him up.
I was mostly there for Connor and LSP like tearing each other apart. I've never been on LSP's side before, but I was like, yo, this guy's making some great internationalist arguments. Like, I don't know, like, but yes, everyone follow Layman on Twitter and then sub to him on YouTube. He does great content. If you have to follow one flavor of radical centrist, he's the best kind.
Goddamn right.
Yeah,
you goddamn right. I am. I've been told a lot. I'm like the pick me for a lot of progressives. They're like, you're the one centrist I like, but then they're also like that for Connor too. So
I do like Connor. Okay, so like I like you. I like Tiberius. I like Connor. I don't think that's like I like Tom Foolery, right? Like I think there's like based conservatives or centrists like I can have real conversations with. And like no, I would like nothing more for American politics for like your brand of conservatism to be like the mainstream conservatism. My biggest issue is dealing with like like fascist adjacent people who are just fucking like insane conspiracy theorists. Like I hate that so much. I love talking to people like y'all because I feel like we can have like legitimate disagreements without being crazy. And I was like,
do you know why Connor and I are so good though?
Oh god.
Because
why? Like.
Because we know theory.
Oh my god.
Conservative theory.
Oh, I read one fucking like I read Kropotkin. I read like the fucking bread book. I went on this like nonfiction kick and I read like some of this old shit. And I was like gang, it's not worth it. Don't read theory. Theory's shit. Like unless it's gonna get you laid, don't read theory. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like.
No, there's actually like really good books on conservatism that explain it in a way that like really, really steelmanned it for me. Just so everybody know, I used to be like a sock dem like 2 years ago when I was first forming my
unacceptable.
I used to be a sock dem, like dipping my toes into market socialism. I almost became a market socialist once.
You made the wrong
decision.
Not
a lot of people know that.
Wrong decision, Layman. You picked the losing team.
Yeah.
But then when I learned what conservatism is, and when I went out of my way to talk to people who weren't like fucking like like dumb fuck like conspiracy Republicans, PragerU motherfuckers, and stopped strawmanning the shit out of it for myself, a lot of things opened up in my head that did not open up before. So
I'm happy for your evolution. All right, so everyone follow Layman, sub to his shit. Tiberius, hit me.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Tiberius D, former DimSoc and now right-wing extraordinaire, and we just kind of do geopolitics and we do conversations like this, usually on Fridays and Sundays for the conversations, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays for the geopolitics. We talk about certain countries and certain things that are going on out in the world. The last episode we did for geopolitics was the Benelux, which is like the United Netherlands. Gave a little bit of history, gave a little bit of the geopolitical situation there. And if you're interested in what I have to say, feel free to stop by. I've got a YouTube. I'm sorry, I have two YouTubes. I've got a Twitch, 2 YouTubes, a Facebook, a LinkedIn. I've got everything. You can find me easily. Hit that Tiberius D.
Link them in the chat so like the gang can find you. Like don't
Yeah.
save
All
labor.
right.
Don't do it to them. Don't make them click multiple times.
Hey,
Let them
well,
click once.
look, if you look here's the deal. So it's in the chat. If you can't hit my name and then follow the link, then we might not want you anyway because intelligence does require effort.
Oh. Okay. All right, everyone.
Then nicotine and vapes can lead to addiction. Text Dylan to 44455 to hear his story. Brought to you by the Facts Now.
Everyone, despite him just negging you just now, he was one of the most based right wingers. You should definitely give him a follow. Geopolitics. In terms of geopolitics, I don't think I actually disagree with him a lot. We had like that based conversation about like Russia. I think that was a really fun place to be. So everyone follow Tiberius wherever he asked you to follow him. And let's move now to the biggest among us, the true Chad, the true 5,000 sub internet Andy on YouTube, the true king of this panel, Jolah. Tell us about you, and so we can give you like a minuscule amount of more subs because you just so based.
I'm happy to be here with 3 different brands of liberal. All of you are sort of right-leaning liberals and then left-leaning liberal with socialist characteristics. I'm very happy to be here with y'all. I'm a SoundCloud rapper. I go by Jolah Music. Check out my music. I do Tom McDonald reactions. Yeah, and I usually talk about that topic and just
Tom McDonald, I love that fucking guy.
So,
White boy. Is that guy, right?
Are you actually a SoundCloud rapper? Like Joe, can you rap
I'll send
for
you
us?
my raps. I'll send you my raps.
No, rap for us right now. Like give
Wait,
the
wait.
people a taste. What you got?
What kind of SoundCloud rap is it? Is it like
that.
auto crooning shit? Is it like
It's
or
like
is
a
it like the fucking like Memphis like horrorcore shit? Revival
lot.
shit.
Logic, Bobby
Oh
Biracial.
fuck that. Ugh.
You don't like it? Oh, dang.
Give him a chance to defend Joe. Like, all right, Joe, do a rap for us. Come on, like if you, like a couple bars. Like you can't say you're a rapper and then not give us some bars. Like what
Way
do you?
too white to rap out loud in front of people. All right, I cannot do that. I'm not at that level yet.
You're not at that
But
level. All right. Everyone, follow Jolah, sub to him, because he clearly needs the moral support so he can like begin his true career as a white rapper.
Well, I just want to say too, like, although these types of discussions aren't going to get like dippy hippie numbers or like Vosh versus Tanky numbers, these discussions are legitimately the most important thing in American democracy right now. Legitimately, this is the #1 issue by far. Is this culture issue between rural and urban areas, and nobody's talking about it because it doesn't make big streamers money. And more of them need to actually do their work and spread messages like this. And have these discussions on a bigger platform because I don't see it. I don't see rural topics being talked about on Destiny, Vosh, any of these people. Yeah, I was, and you know what? Shout out to Destiny for having me on for a little bit to talk about that too. He was really cool about it. Yeah, he platformed me for a second. But anyway, all y'all are really cool. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Everyone, stop making plugs on my channel. Like that's just. And then if you like conversations like this, I try and host panels on issues that matter. If you are watching and you haven't followed, obviously follow all these wonderful gentlemen, but follow me because like who put this together? It was yours truly. Like yo. So again, thanks gang. Thank all of you so much. I respect all of you immensely. I think I've made that relatively clear. I think this was an excellent conversation. And I hope to have more of these in the future. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a lovely lovely Friday night. And let's start the weekend off correctly. I love all of you. I'm going to run now. And